Welcome to the Smith and Rowland Show. Let's join our host, Alan Smith and Jeff Rowland.
All righty. Welcome everybody to the Smith and Rowland Show.
Here we are.
There we are.
Here.
We got a special guest, Jason.
We got a special guest today, Mr. Terry Estes.
Yes, and Terry, just for the record, I want you to know, you need to know this. You're my friend.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I've got your back.
See, that's not...
with these two guys.
You got to realize who he says that to. The only other people he said that to, Terry, is Andy Elliott and Trevor Craig.
And they're my friends, too.
So you got to be careful. So we got some exciting things to talk about during this segment and next segment. Terry has been to the Asbury Revival. Not only is he's a vintage revivalist, he's vintage Asbury too. So
it's his second time to Asbury
second time
Revival.
Through. That's right.
This is Terry Estes from Taylorsville, North Carolina. Yep. And Terry, it's good to have you. And you were at the big Asbury Revival, 1970. Is that right? 1970, when it first broke out there. And I had breakfast with Terry this past week, and he'd just gotten back actually. And from the Asbury Revival.
Yeah.
And he'd been there 2 or 3 days, I think, this time.
There about 3 days.
About 3 days. And so anyway, he's agreed to come share with us. You know, we called him from the stage at the end of the show last week.
Yeah.
And
I think he was driving up there then last Sunday night, wasn't he?
He
About
was.
20 minutes away.
Yeah. When we got a hold of him. Yeah. I'm thrilled that you're here. Back in the 70s when you were there, I'm as curious about that, hearing from you on that, as I am even what's going on now. Just to see what kind of
a good place to start.
Yeah.
It was, he was in college then, is that right, at Asbury?
Wow, Terry, you was in school in the 70s and at 50 years old then. Let's see, that would be, wow. You're looking good, I'll tell you that.
You're looking good.
You were my friend.
Yeah. See, you're now getting the true definition.
That's what I was talking about.
It changes, you know.
Yeah, that's what it means.
But back in the 70s, when God sat down there, you was there. You was a student there.
I was.
What did you experience then? What was it like?
Well, first of all, let me say that wasn't the first time it happened there. And so when I first got there, I got there January the 2nd of 1970. The revival started February the 3rd
of
1970.
You weren't there long then, were you?
I wasn't there long. And right after I got there, I got involved with a group of people that were praying, and they had set up a 24-hour prayer watch. And so they asked everybody to pray, take an hour out of the day and pray for a revival. But here's the thing. They were praying for a revival because their parents had been in a revival in Asbury.
Oh, come on.
In 1950.
That? Oh, my goodness.
Right.
I didn't know that.
And Ron Ross told me today that he talked to somebody that said that actually there was a revival there at the college in 1900.
What about that?
Oh my goodness!
So if you go to the Asbury's website, their college, they actually have a whole page devoted to revivals. This would be the 8th one that's happened.
I knew it was more than 4.
Yeah,
it's been that right?
The 8th. This would be number 8.
I knew it was more than 4.
And
oh my goodness!
And so the first one happened in 1905 during a blizzard.
Is that right?
That's one way to
do it. It's a good time to have revival during a blizzard, isn't it?
But this morning when Terry was talking about it, I couldn't remember how many there was. But it was 8. This is number 8.
Wow.
When was the next one?
That makes sense.
It was 1905, 1908, 1921, 1950, 1958, and 1970, 1992, and 2006.
Yep.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
And then 2023.
Yep, 2023.
Yeah.
Well, that's a history of revival.
It's a history of revival.
Yeah.
Well, you know, several people around know that Bob Jones was here for a while, and we were really we were really grateful to see him. But Bob always talked about a portal.
Yeah.
That certain places there was a portal.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that Hughes Auditorium is a portal.
Yeah. Definitely an open heaven there.
It is an open heaven there. Yeah. And of course that's enhanced, I'm sure. By prayer.
Sure.
by just a
Yeah.
A conglomeration of prayer and a concerted prayer.
Yeah.
That.
Talking about the revival that's going on also would bring to my mind things that comes against it. Because, for example, with Asbury, with as many outpourings as they've had, there must be incredible warfare around that place as well. Could you speak to that, man?
Well, there is. I don't know that I've got enough personal experience to
I hear you.
to speak to that, other than to say that it's and sort of this is a caution as well. One of the best Southern generals in the Civil War was killed by friendly fire.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think we need to be real careful.
Absolutely.
That we
Positively.
don't, who we agree with.
Yeah.
Let's agree with God.
Sure.
That's right.
What God's doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So back in the 70s when God was pouring out there and you was there, what was it like to be there? What did you experience in that outpouring?
Well, kind of the difference between that revival and this revival was it was in 1970, it was all sparked by testimonies. It was entirely sparked by testimonies. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of a spontaneous. They decided at the last minute the night before to have testimony, open testimonies, mm-hmm. and so they had testimonies. They sang, and then they asked for 3 testimonies, and then they sang some more, and they asked for 3 more, just from the
mm-hmm.
the people, and then. Mm-hmm. Well, and then at the end of the chapel hour, they did an altar call,
mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. There was probably 200, 300 people went to the altar,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, these people, when they got done with their business, they got up and stood by the stage because they wanted to give their testimony.
Yeah.
Did they? Okay.
Well, so then nobody left.
Yeah.
Nobody left. As a matter of fact, one guy I heard later say that he skipped chapel that morning to study for an exam, and when he came out, he thought he'd missed the rapture.
He said everybody was gone.
Because there was nobody there. And so then that was 11 o'clock class. Nobody left. Just nobody went to class. And then 12 o'clock was lunch, and nobody went with the cafeteria. The food was fixed for 1,000 students, and nobody left.
Yeah.
And so by 1 o'clock, when it started time for the 1 o'clock class, the line was down the side and halfway around the back of the
mm-hmm.
people to give their testimonies.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, they said, let's just cancel classes for the rest of the afternoon.
And that was day one.
That was day one. Well, then it just kept getting
more
and more intense. Every time they'd play that, they got that big pipe organ. They'd play "To God Be the Glory," and every time it'd start to die down a little bit, they'd play that. Matter of fact, one night, it went 24/7, but one night, and it was cold that time. You talk about a blizzard. It was like, minus 13 or something.
Boy.
It was horrible. But in the middle of the night, one night, it kind of died down. There wasn't that many people. Mm-hmm. This was probably 3 days later or something
mm-hmm.
like that. Well, they opened up all the windows in the Hughes Auditorium. They opened up that pipe organ and started playing "To God Be the Glory."
And here they come.
And the place filled up again.
What about that?
But the difference then was, some people may remember this phenomenon, but actually kids left the revival and they went back into their dorms and used this thing called a payphone.
An odd thing.
And they called their parents and said, you got to see what's going on here. But then nobody came. What happened there is they asked us to come to them. Yeah. And so, we went out on witness teams. Yeah. And every place we went, it was revival. I mean, you just...
In other words, the students left the revival and went to other churches.
Terry, I was actually just reading on their website about that 1970 revival, and I heard you talking about you were on one of those, they call them witness teams.
We call them witness teams.
But it says some 2,000 witness teams went out from Wilmore to churches and at least 130 college campuses around the nation.
Oh my goodness!
So you were on some of those trips.
Yeah, but I wasn't on that many.
But what was that like, though?
Yeah, that was before social media.
So,
by the way,
how did that even happen? I mean, that was in the 70s, and I mean, most people can't think past yesterday. But in 1970, you about had a payphone, and that was about it.
That was it.
And so, how did that even happen? How would you get called out to another church, and what would happen when you would get there?
Well, what happened was kids would call home and tell their parents.
Oh, okay.
And then the parents would tell the pastor, and the pastor would say, well, let's get them,
come here,
see if somebody can come down here. And so the revival started on Tuesday morning. And I don't know, about Thursday or Friday, somebody said to me, do you want to go on a witness team this weekend? And I didn't know what a witness team was. I've just hadn't been there a month, But I said, yeah, sure. And they said, you want to go to a witness team to Madison, Tennessee? And I had no idea where Madison, Tennessee was.
Yeah.
But let's go.
Yeah.
And so it turns out that's right outside of Nashville, if you don't know. And we were in 7 churches that weekend.
Good gosh, 7 churches.
Our group was in 7 different churches.
Oh my goodness!
Started Saturday night. We left Saturday morning, and then Saturday night, and then all day Sunday.
And so the churches then, they had to meet all through the day then to receive.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And
so, what were you doing when you would go in a church? What were you doing?
Basically, they would have their worship service, which was, those days it was a piano, maybe an organ, and maybe a choir, generally a song leader.
Yeah.
And then we would start giving testimonies, and there'd be 3 or 4 of us, and we would start with testimonies, and then it just so happened that generally it fell to me to do the altar call. Mm-hmm. I would kind of be the
good.
And
you'd had a lot of practice at altar calls?
I had a lot of practice at altar calls. I'd been to a lot of altar calls.
Well, you had a lot of practice there.
Yeah. Actually, I was watching, if y'all have seen that old that video of Dr. Kinlaw,
I have seen that,
talking about it. And I was actually offended listening to that because...
back then or now?
No, recently.
Recently.
When I saw it, because he was saying, talking about that dynamic and the people that God used, and he said it seemed like God used the least qualified.
I remember that. I must have been a little offended too, because I do remember that statement. I thought, does he know what's going on here?
But it's true. It's true. I was and still am.
Would you, when you would go out to these churches, would you see that spread? Was it
every place, every time? Never failed.
Really?
Never failed.
So it would just start.
It was like you walked in the door and you could say, "Well, the heat's on."
Yeah,
that's funny.
It's going to be revival, or the heat's off, the air conditioner's on. It's going to be revival. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
The favor of the Lord was with you.
You just expected it.
All about that. Yeah.
I recently saw a video. I don't know if I sent that to you of Randy Clark talking about revival.
Yes, you did send it to me. Yes.
And he's been pastoring revival since 1984. Mm-hmm. And so he's so assured of it whenever he walks into a church, that he gets people and coaches them as to, okay,
here's what's going to happen.
Here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the way
wow.
That's just the way it was, when we went out.
Now, in the 70s, that outpouring lasted how long?
Well, we had to go back to class a week later. Mm-hmm. It started 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and it's an hour class. Well, we went back to class at 11 o'clock the following Tuesday.
Wow.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. But it, I mean, it didn't stop. It, it still went on the evenings, and, it was a...
So the revival started on a Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday.
In 70, it started on Tuesday because that was when our chapel was. Now their chapel is on Wednesday.
So it started on a Wednesday.
It started Wednesday this year.
So it started on a Tuesday, and by that weekend, you were already visiting other churches.
By that weekend, actually, they had sent they had already sent a team to Azusa Pacific College in California, and they were having revival.
Wow!
By that weekend.
Terry,
by that weekend.
So, I'm guessing you were there that Tuesday morning when it started.
Yes, I was.
So, the dean of the college, Custer Reynolds. What kind of guy was he? What was? I mean, he's.
Well, now Terry wasn't there, but for 4 weeks.
Yeah,
but
it said I was sitting here reading about it, and it just said he felt led to invite persons to give personal testimony,
right,
instead of him speaking. But
right.
as a person, what kind of person was he?
Well, I'm not supposed to say this.
This is the Smith and Rowland
This is
show.
the place where you're supposed to say it.
Because he made me promise. But I was actually involved in that first month that I was there. I got involved with this little group of charismatics, you know. And so, we had our own little private revival down in the basement. Yeah. We were literally underground. And
now, was it in the same building?
It was in the same building.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it did deliverance, and we prayed for people. And
now, did the dean and them know you were doing that?
They did. They didn't condone it, but they didn't shut it down. One of the deans walked in one time and said, "Boys, we just want you to make sure what you're doing is scriptural." Uh-huh. And our leader, Mark, said, "Well, it is. Do you want to see?" He said, "No." He said, "You just make sure it's scriptural."
So now this was going on in the basement.
In the basement.
Now the
revival is going on upstairs.
And so y'all then started that prayer meeting downstairs.
And then we started having prayer meetings. Well, we were having, deliverance sessions and But Dean Reynolds, about the end of the school year, I have no recollection why, but for some reason I was riding in his car. He was giving me a ride someplace, and he said to me, "I just want you to know that we know that your group was instrumental in getting this whole thing."
Is that what he said?
And he said, "And if you ever tell anybody, I'll deny it."
Well, your secret is safe with Terry.
It's safe with us.
That's right.
Could be no safer place.
That's exactly right. Safe as if you're
in
within your
mother's arms. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Compare what happened then to what's you said that in the 70s it was mainly testimonies.
Mainly testimonies.
And what's going on now? To your right.
Well, now it's incredible worship. It's just incredible worship, and it doesn't matter what they sing. I don't understand. I cannot comprehend how never mind the fact. I mean, I realize they're only in their 20s. They're but I don't know how they can strum a guitar and jump up and down for 2 hours and never stop.
Yeah.
But that's what, I mean, you see that, you see it in bits and pieces, but I don't know how many worship teams I saw.
Really?
I don't have any. Well, I saw one worship team twice.
Well, there was one guy that was kind of getting later in the night He was strumming the guitar, jumping her up and down. Right. Didn't really strum it that well, nor sing that well. But I never seen.
Just anointing.
It just didn't have a thing to do with it. It's just the anointing.
It is.
Oh, the worship was there.
And you look around at the people, because I was up in the balcony for the most time. But, I mean, you can, Jesus said you can tell what the Spirit's doing. It's like the wind blowing. Mm-hmm. So basically what he's talking about is you see the leaves moving. Yeah. So you know what the Spirit's doing. Well, you can look at the people and you can see. You can
could tell that the Spirit was moving.
Man, yeah. And little kids, tiny little kids. I mean, I took a picture of 10 or 11-year-old just standing there with his hands raised, nobody around him, nobody prompting. And
what about
just
now? 1970, was there that much worship then, or just mainly testimony?
Well, there was worship, but like I say, it was the pipe organ and and a little, maybe a 3-piece singing ensemble or something like that. But it wasn't anything like what we. What's our custom to what we see today.
As we're wrapping up this first segment, though, Terry, can you pull out of your memory, just spend like 2 minutes and kind of go back in your mind to 1970, and can you give me like what was one of the coolest things you got to see from the 1970 revival?
Well, I guess,
or what did you expect? Like, what was
I guess probably one of the coolest things, that revival, as this revival, was all about either, being born again, meeting Jesus for the first time, or moving your life back, moving him back into the center of your life, Mm-hmm. And so I guess the thing, probably the coolest thing, was there was roughly 1,000 students at that, at the school at that time in that session on Tuesday morning, and they didn't all succumb in the first in the first go around, but they all succumbed.
Sooner or later, it got you.
Sooner or later.
Well, what was it like? Okay, it went through Tuesday. The next week, and then you started back class. How did you do class in that type atmosphere?
I didn't do very well.
That's for some reason I knew I was going to get some type of answer, but not quite that direct. I'll be honest with you.
I didn't do that well. Just to be honest with you, I was ruined.
It was over.
I didn't want to do anything. Go on a witness team. All I wanted to do is wait till Saturday and go on another witness team. I mean, I played on the soccer team, played basketball and softball and speech class and all of the stuff that that you do, and went to classes. I guess.
Some of them.
And then,
but you look forward to the weekend.
Oh, I just wanted to go back out on a witness team.
That's right.
Oh my goodness!
That brings me to we'll get into it in the next.
Well, let's end this segment here.
There's questions I got about that I want to ask you.
Yeah, and so we go into this next segment. I want to encourage you, if you're just a first time listener, or if you've been listening to us, make sure you head on over to the KingdomPropheticsSociety.org. You can join up there. Terry, are you a member over at the Kingdom? Mm-hmm. You can chat with Terry over there, and he'll. Right. You got questions about maybe what he experienced twice at Asbury. I'm sure he'll be glad to answer your questions. But make sure you head over there and check us out, KingdomPropheticsSociety.org.
Thank you for joining today's Smith and Rowland Show. You can check out our website at KingdomPropheticsSociety.org and our daily Unplugged podcast at smithandrowlandshow.podbean.com. You can also join us on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify.